Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. This week, in our weekly lesson, we're going to go through the subject of asbestos. Now, this weekly lesson is going to be a little bit different from others, and I'll tell you why. First of all, there are renovations happening in my apartment block, so things are a little bit noisy. And as a result of that, I won't be using video today because I'm aware that there's things happening around me. Last week, the workmen came to examine my property for asbestos. They're doing some renovation work elsewhere in this block, and they're just trying to make sure that no one is going to be exposed to asbestos. For those of you who don't know, asbestos is a toxic substance which was used in the building of houses very early on in the 20th century. And as a result, everyone's very afraid when they touch an old house that they might come across asbestos. Here, asbestos is taken very seriously, and before any work can be done anywhere, asbestos testing has to take place. There were a number of men arrived at my door some weeks ago, anxious because they know that if they find asbestos, there's going to be a big problem. Today, we're going to read through a news story about a man who burned asbestos, and he's been fined £20,000. And that's a very good story to get us started today with our weekly lesson. So let's begin. A man who burned waste, including asbestos, has been ordered to pay charges totaling £20,864. The person operated an illegal waste site near Milton Keynes without permission. The 64-year-old admitted to 2 waste crime charges at Milton Keynes Court on Friday. The Environment Agency of the government said officers had investigated the site twice and found large amounts of waste on each visit, but their advice to the person was continuously ignored. It added that as the site was close to a housing estate and an ancient woodland, his activities put residents and nature at risk. Right, so that's our first story, which takes us into the subject of asbestos. Now, the word asbestos itself is a little bit like cancer, in that it can cause immediate fear with a lot of people. But when they came last week to check my property for asbestos, they were very quick to point out that no one is in any danger unless they start drilling into it, in which case toxic fumes would be released. Let's look at another story here. Asbestos roof tiles dumped at a beauty spot. And of course, a beauty spot is a place in nature where you will find beautiful things like trees and maybe pathways and grass. And this is another story from January 2025. It says here, a large quantity of asbestos has been dumped in a woodland popular with walkers. The pile of roof tiles made of the toxic material was left in an area known as Sammy's Wood, near Cinderford in Gloucestershire. The rubbish was left on 10th of December, and Forestry England has urged anyone who saw a transit-style tipper vehicle on Speech House Road that morning to get in touch. And it says here, asbestos was used regularly in construction, in the 20th century before it was realized how dangerous it can be. It was banned in the UK in 1999 because the fibres were linked to diseases, including cancer. And there we are. There's many stories here about asbestos, including a few very sad deaths. One here, it says, terminal asbestos cancer diagnosis hard to accept. Our grandfather says he didn't react at all after being told he had a terminal cancer linked to asbestos exposure. So you can hear there, asbestos is quite a big deal here. And people are always testing for it in old properties, just in case they're exposed to it while they're doing any work. It's very interesting, this whole story about asbestos. One more story for us today, a care home. That's where we put old people that can no longer look after themselves. Care home to replace asbestos-riddled building. And that's an English idiom. If something is riddled with something, it means it has so much of it, it's impossible to separate it out. Plans to demolish an asbestos-riddled old building and build a new 38-bed care home on its site have been approved, despite parking and traffic concerns. Stroud District Council has granted exemplar healthcare permission to redevelop it. The proposals include the demolition of the former home and to build a care facility on its site. Yet the law is very strict with asbestos. If it's found anywhere, it needs to be urgently removed or at least sealed off. So it's very interesting. So that's another story all about asbestos today. Asbestos fly tipping is when you dump asbestos somewhere where you think no one will find it. Of course, that's a criminal offence because it's toxic, but many people don't want to pay the money or don't want to do anything, which would mean that they have to take responsibility for what they find. So just looking through the news today, asbestos and building waste being dumped on moorland, and frustration as fears raised of asbestos in a dump. A theatre to close for months while asbestos is removed. These are the kind of headlines which can make us panic just a little bit. Let me just jump back and tell you my experience with the asbestos officers here when they came to my apartment block. So this all started when the lady upstairs was having water flooding her bathroom, and unfortunately that same water also dripped into my apartment. And in order to fix it, they're laying down a new floor in both her apartment and my apartment. But in order to do that, they have to check to make sure there's no asbestos between our floors. So they arrived last week, and it was very easy. I mean, I was a bit worried that they were going to turn up wearing these plastic suits with masks, but actually it was nothing like that. They came in and they simply said, we have to do some drilling to check for asbestos, and they drilled a hole in my ceiling and they took away some samples and they discovered that everything was fine. So that was quite something. It was scary, though, to hear the word asbestos around the place. As a direct result of that, they then made their move to arrange access to replace the floors and to renovate the bathrooms, which they're saying may take up to 2 weeks. And if it's only 2 weeks, I have no problem with that. But I'm just pleased that there was no asbestos, because that could have meant some kind of evacuation while the asbestos was being removed. They've actually started doing the work that they need to do, and you may hear in the background my little cat. He's not happy because he's being kept in one room, and you might hear him meowing in the background. Let's read another story all about asbestos. And this one says, a theatre to close for months while asbestos is being removed. And this is from August 2024. A theatre will be shut for up to 6 months while asbestos is removed from the building. The Forum in Barrow, Cumbria was forced to cancel its shows and close last month after the hazardous material was found in the backstage area following a water leak. Westmoreland Council, which owns and manages the venue, said it was hoping to reschedule shows while the work is carried out. It says here no traces of asbestos were found in air quality tests, saying that there was no evidence to suggest that anyone has been exposed. In the meantime, we won't be selling any further tickets for events, they've said. Well, just as well, really. So just to give you some background, so because of this issue of having the floors fixed, there'll be no video to accompany this weekly lesson. Hopefully by next week I'll be a bit more organised. I've spent this morning trying to clean out the bathroom, ready for these people to come in. So it should all be okay. Well, that's it from me for today. I think probably the main feature of today's lesson is the verb to be riddled with or to riddle. And it's not just about the usual meaning of riddle, which is all about a little joke or a puzzle. To be riddled with something means to have something so badly that it cannot be separated from the thing it's joined to. Let me just give you some quick examples of that. So I can say, oh, I'm riddled with the flu. I'm riddled with illness. I'm riddled with the cold. And some people might often say, John is going to die because he's riddled with cancer. So to be riddled with means to have something which is inseparable. It's something which goes on and on. That is inseparable from its host. I think these old houses, including the one I'm living in, often they're riddled with dampness. Now, it doesn't mean that I can see mold anywhere, although sometimes, of course, it does appear. What it simply means is that in the walls, there may be some kind of dampness or damp patches, something to be very careful with. So, to be riddled with. If your dog has fleas, you can say your dog is riddled with fleas, for example. There's many other examples to be riddled with. And that's it from me for today. I wish you a wonderful, wonderful day ahead. And hopefully this week I'll get the chance to do some other video and audio clips just to show you what's going on around me. That's it from me for now. See you. Bye.